Hey guys, it's Harry here. Let me take you back to the very first rental property I ever negotiated. I walked into that meeting with zero experience, no fancy team behind me, and honestly, more nerves than confidence. Yet I walked out with a deal that still pays me today. How? Not because I had the most money or the sharpest lawyer, but because I understood the psychology of negotiation. And by the end of this video, you'll know the exact tactics I used, so you can walk into your first negotiation with confidence too. But here's the unexpected truth. Winning a property deal often has less to do with the numbers, and far more to do with the way you carry yourself, the questions you ask, and the silence you're willing to hold. Most beginners don't realize this, and it's the reason they overpay. Stay with me, because I'm going to share a surprising technique I used that completely flipped the negotiation in my favor. Now, when I say negotiation, you might picture heated debates across a polished table. But real estate deals? They're often quiet, sometimes awkward, and always human. The seller is usually just a person, often stressed, sometimes emotional, occasionally desperate. If you can understand what they need beyond the price tag, you have leverage that most investors miss. Take the opening moments of my first deal. The seller asked me a simple question. Why do you want this property? Most beginners would panic, pitch too hard, or gush about their big plans. Instead, I paused. Silence is uncomfortable, but here's why it works. It makes the other person reveal more than they planned. The seller kept talking, and within 30 seconds, I learned that what they really wanted wasn't just money, it was speed. They needed to move on quickly, and right there, I knew my leverage. You probably haven't heard this before, but silence is one of the most underrated negotiation weapons. FBI negotiator Chris Voss calls it the tactical pause. A simple pause that pressures the other side to fill the space. By holding my silence, the seller essentially gave me the roadmap to the deal. And that's a tactic you can use on your very first negotiation. But it wasn't just silence. Body language mattered too. I walked in steady, relaxed shoulders, slow breathing. Why? Because sellers pick up on desperation instantly. If you look like you're chasing, they run. If you look calm and in control, they lean in. Harvard research on negotiation shows that nonverbal cues can influence perceived authority more than words. And in my case, it worked. Now here's where it gets interesting. Price didn't come up until later. Instead, I asked open-ended questions designed to keep the seller talking. Simple lines like, what would make this deal work best for you? Or what's the biggest challenge for you right now with this property? Notice I didn't ask, how much do you want? That's too direct and shuts people down. Instead, I invited them to share frustrations. And the more they talked, the clearer it became. I didn't need to outbid anyone. I just needed to solve their problem. But here's the twist. You don't always need to give them what they ask for directly. In this case, the seller wanted a fast close. I didn't have all the cash ready to close immediately. So what did I do? I reframed the deal. I offered a small deposit up front, proof of financing, and confidence that inspections and delays wouldn't hold us back. In return, they dropped the price significantly just to have the certainty. That was my first big lesson. Certainty often beats price. And it's not just my story. Warren Buffett once said, price is what you pay, value is what you get. In negotiations, the seller's definition of value isn't always money. Sometimes it's certainty, speed, or simplicity. If you can identify that and package your offer around it, you'll often win even without being the highest bidder. But there's one more tactic I used that made the seller lean completely in my direction. Anchoring. Instead of waiting for them to state their asking price again, I set a frame. I referenced a nearby property that had sold lower, casually mentioning it while we toured the kitchen. This subtly reset their expectations before numbers were even discussed. Anchoring works because humans tend to rely heavily on the first number introduced in a negotiation, even if it's just context. Now, what happened when we finally discussed the price? That's where things got tense, and where I used a technique most beginners would be too scared to try. Stay with me, because in the next part, I'll reveal how I countered their asking price, held my ground, and walked away with a deal that gave me instant equity on day one. The seller finally leaned across the table and said their number. It was higher than I could afford and frankly more than the property was worth. Most beginners in that moment would either argue or panic. Instead, I took a slow breath and repeated their number back to them, calmly, with a raised eyebrow, as if I was weighing it carefully. Then I paused. No reaction, no rush to fill the silence, just a pause. And here's why that mattered. Humans are wired to feel tension in silence. In negotiations, silence after repeating their number creates doubt. They start second-guessing themselves. The seller quickly followed up. But of course, we're flexible. That was my green light. But here's the unexpected truth. I didn't counter with my real offer right away. I used what's called a soft counter. I said, given the condition and the timeline you mentioned, I was thinking somewhere quite a bit lower. Notice I didn't lock into a specific figure yet. This kept the door open, and crucially, it made the seller ask me, well, what number are you thinking? At that point, I had control. Now, anchoring came into play again. Instead of jumping straight to my target number, I referenced the repairs the house needed and the stress of waiting longer for another buyer. I wove those into my story before mentioning a figure. My offer came across not as an attack, but as a logical solution. And when I finally gave my number, well below theirs, it didn't sound outrageous, it sounded reasonable. Here's where tone matters. I didn't say it apologetically, I delivered it steady, confident, with the calm certainty of someone who knows what the deal is worth. Negotiation experts often say, if your first offer doesn't make you sweat, it's too high. I was sweating inside, but on the outside, total composure. The seller pushed back, of course, but here's a tactic I use that most people miss. I framed my offer not just as a number, but as a benefit. I said, at this price, I can guarantee a quick close, no haggling over small repairs, and you'll walk away within weeks. Remember earlier when they revealed speed mattered most? That's what I leaned into. I wasn't buying a property, I was selling peace of mind. And that's the lesson I want you to remember. Negotiation isn't about taking, it's about trading. You trade certainty, speed, and convenience for a better price. Most beginners think they're battling over a number. In reality, you're packaging a solution that makes your lower price more attractive than someone else's higher one. But here's the twist. My first offer still wasn't accepted. The seller hesitated. And this is where many beginners fold, thinking they've lost the deal. Instead, I held my ground. I didn't rush to raise my number. Instead, I calmly said, I understand if this doesn't work, but that's where I need to be to make it a smart investment. Then I closed my folder and sat back. That move changed everything. By showing I was ready to walk, I took back control of the deal. Psychologists call this the power of BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. When you're willing to walk away, you're stronger. The seller knew I was serious, and within minutes, they lowered their counter. The result? I got the property at a price that instantly gave me equity on day one. It wasn't luck, and it wasn't because I had more money. It was because I applied strategies anyone can copy. Silence, body language, open-ended questions, soft counters, and walking power. So here's what I want you to take away. Your first negotiation doesn't have to be perfect. Mine wasn't. But with these tactics, you don't just buy a property. You set the tone for your entire investing career. And imagine this. What if your very first deal could give you confidence, equity, and cash flow right out of the gate? It's possible. Now, I want to leave you with a challenge. The next time you're in a negotiation, whether it's a property, a car, or even a small business deal, practice silence. Practice holding your ground. You'll be surprised at how much people reveal when you stop talking. Remember, the best deals aren't always won by those with the deepest pockets. They're won by those who know how to listen, frame, and negotiate like a pro. And that's how I closed my very first rental property deal, a strategy that still shapes how I invest today. So let me ask you, what's the first negotiation you're going to try these tactics on? Drop your answer in the comments below, because your story might just inspire the next investor watching.